yeah, this is No Free Lunch, The Significance of Tiny Contributions by Zach Barnett. This was an analysis from 2018. What's up, Dead the Wraith? How you doing? Oh, I should give Dead the Wraith a shout out too. Dead is cool. Go check out his streams. He does, he's usually playing games or playing games with friends, but he's got cool stories. Good dude. He's smart. Valpo says, jury due tomorrow. We'll see how long they keep me in the pool. Yeah. Good, champ. Good to hear. Good to hear. So, yeah, if you don't know Dead the Wraith, he's good peoples. Yeah, they called me for jury duty a year or two ago. Maybe it was last year. And I didn't have to go in. They were like, call the night before, and if you don't have to come in, they'll tell you like after a certain time. And they called me and they never wanted me. I did that for a whole week. And if you do that for a week, they're like, thank you, that's it. But yeah. Okay. But yeah, as always, feel free to ask questions along the way. I'll do my best to answer this and answering questions about the paper. My first time reading it too. Yeah, like I said, this is No Free Lunch, The Significance of Tiny Contributions by Zach Barnett, an analysis from 2018. So here we go. Consider a variant of Parfit's drops of water example, that's from 84, as presented by Nevsky, 2016. There are 10,000 men in the desert suffering from an intensely painful thirst. We are a group of 10,000 people near the desert, and each of us has a pint of water. We can't go into the desert ourselves, but what we can do is pour our pint into a water cart. The cart will be driven into the desert, and any water in it will be evenly distributed amongst the men. If we pour our pints in our pints, the men suffering will be relieved. The problem is, though, that while together these acts would do a lot of good, it does not seem that any individual such act will make a difference. If one pours in one pint, this will only enable each man to drink an extra 10,000th of a pint of water. This is no more than a single drop, and a single drop more or less is too minuscule an amount to make any difference to how they feel. If this is right, it is unclear why any of us has reason to add our pints. Yes, these men are suffering, but if adding my pint will not make any difference, then what reason do I have to do so? End quote. You know, this immediately annoys me, and like, I may immediately annoy you too, because like, okay, there's one guy among 10,000 that's dying of thirst. I give him my pint. He doesn't die of thirst. Yes, 9,999 other guys will die, but I just saved someone's life with just some water I had to give away. So it, like, the idea that we were dividing up the pints evenly among 10,000 people, I know that's not the point of the example, but it just seems like such an obvious counterexample as to be silly at the moment that like it kind of annoys me, but I know that's not the point. It's like, you know, what little good can each of us do in our everyday lives that will actually amount to any sort of like grand gesture? Yeah, don't do what Viper says, Valpo. But anyway, like, you get the point. It's that even if you're only doing a little bit of good, and it's distributed among, like, it's like a drop of water in the ocean compared to the sea of troubles that is out there in the world nowadays, why bother doing that one little bit of good? All right. Author says, the example vividly illustrates a more general ethical quandary. How can we account for the rightness or wrongness of acts that clearly contribute to some morally significant outcome, but which each seem too small individually to make any meaningful difference? There are a variety of views surrounding this issue. This paper's aim is to provide a new reason to think that even the tiniest contributions to some significant outcome, for example, the addition of one drop of water to someone's canteen, must be capable of making a relevant causal difference, for example, of relieving someone's suffering to some extent. Existing arguments for this thesis tend to be Sorites-style arguments. Such arguments imagine varying a subject's predicament bit by bit until it is clear that a relevant difference has been achieved. The arguments offered in this paper are structurally different. For this reason, they are not vulnerable to objections that have been leveled against the Sorites-style arguments. And if you don't know Sorites, it's a slippery slope. You say, well, one little thing, and then all of a sudden you're all the way at the other end of the series. Doger says, free lunch history. It's from Heinlein, 1960s. The moon is a harsh mistress, even more used after Milton Friedman used it in the 1970s. Yeah. You give a mouse a cookie. Exactly, Rex. Exactly. But again, if you give someone a crumb, are you doing them any good? Well, yeah, if they need food and you give them a crumb, it's may keep them from dying, you know? It can help. Okay, but we'll see what the that's a Sorites style argument, that like one little thing, like it could add up to something significant. That's the standard, I guess, response to this. And the author here says they're not doing that, or maybe they're doing something. Well, we'll have to see what they're up to. 2. Background. The general problem raised above can arise in the context of many real-life decisions. Should I walk or drive? Should I order tofu or chicken? Should I vote or stay home? Yeah, this is where you normally see it. This is exactly what I was thinking of, although I forgot to say it. Should I vote? Because everyone's vote ostensibly counts. But in the millions upon millions of people here in the United States of America, does your vote really count? Like, do you need to add your voice? Now, of course, there's been some very tight elections where only few people, like one person only won by a few votes. But for like someone like me in New York, the chance of my one vote counting is very unlikely, like being the deciding factor. But that's where you see it, is a lot of times in voting discussion. Okay, in making such decisions, we may be tempted to think that it does not matter how we decide. For example, it's not like my choice will have any real effect on anyone, so what difference does it make? It is important to distinguish two types of case that might prompt one to have this thought: threshold and non-threshold cases. Naturally, both types of cases involve some collection of acts that suffice to bring about some morally significant outcome. What differs is how the acts combine to produce that outcome. In threshold cases, there are sharp boundaries or thresholds such that, when they are crossed, morally significant effects are triggered. Voting contexts provide a clear example. When such thresholds are present, there will typically be just some chance, however small, that one will perform a threshold crossing act, for example by casting the deciding vote in an election. For this reason, at least some threshold cases tend to be amenable to a simple expectational treatment. For example, true, your vote is unlikely to matter, but if you do cast the deciding vote, then your vote will matter a great deal. So this is the issue. It's like in voting, you don't know what the outcome is going to be, and so it does matter that, like, in aggregate, your vote does count in getting your candidate over the 50% mark, or whatever it is. Cases of the second type can be seen more philosophically troubling. In this type of case, when a person dismisses the idea that her act will make a difference, it may seem that there is no chance at all that her act will make any real difference. Nevsky's version of the drops of water example is offered as a case of this sort. And remember, before I get into whatever they said, remember I said, look, yeah, if you give people a drop of water, you're not saving anyone's life. But if you give one person that like canteen of water, you may save that one person's life. I changed the example from the distribution among lots of people to the threshold case of one person. And that's how I got around it. I said, but this is obvious. They know this. They're not this stupid. All right, so here's the quote from Nevsky. There is no chance that pouring your pint into the cart will make a difference to the alleviation of the men's suffering. A single pint added only allows each man to drink a single drop, and however much more water he is receiving, one drop more or less is simply not enough to change the level of his suffering. End quote. These non-threshold cases have a gradual structure that lacks sharp boundaries. In such cases, even though some collection of acts is sufficient to bring about a morally significant outcome, no individual act is supposed to make any real difference, a difference in someone's level of suffering on its own. Cases with this feature, if genuinely possible, raise difficult questions about how to account for the rightness or wrongness of the contributing acts. Yeah, so again, if they're starving and you give them 1 or 2 drops, it doesn't really matter, just drops, they're still going to die. You may save them 1 more minute of life, but like you're not doing anything like critical, like saving their lives. Some have argued that such cases are possible. For instance, Sinnott Armstrong suggests that the harm caused by global warming results from a collection of individually harmless acts. Quote, "You might think that my driving on Sunday raises the temperature of the globe by an infinitesimal amount. I doubt that, but even if it does, my exhaust on that Sunday does not cause any climate change at all. No storms or floods or droughts or heat waves can be traced to my individual act of driving. It is these climate changes that cause harms to people. Global warming by itself causes no harm without climate change. Hence, since my individual act of driving on that one Sunday does not cause any climate change, it causes no harm to anyone." End quote. On the other hand, there are difficulties associated with allowing for cases like this. There's something strange about the thought that, say, a collection of individually harmless acts could cause a grave harm. In order to examine an important argument against the possibility of cases of this type, it is helpful to describe explicitly the core principle operative in the drops of water example. All right, before we do that, you also got to remember it's the old quote, it's not the great evil, it's the indifference of good men. So it's like, it's not even that you have to do lots of acts. It's because that you don't act in these small ways that adds up to the great evil. It's the indifference of good men that is leading to like terrible outcomes. So there are, even though they're saying like, oh, there's a lot of arguments on this side where it says, you know, these little acts don't matter. There is other traditions that say the small acts do matter. The question is how. Okay, so this is the no small improvement. No small improvement is defined as the addition or subtraction of a single drop of water to from someone's canteen cannot on its own make her suffering better or worse. End quote. Or end definition. If one endorses a principle like this, it is clear that one will be vulnerable to a problem akin to that posed by the Sorites paradox. Repeated appeals to the principle seems to generate absurd conclusions. Artzenius and McCarthy, Norcross and Kagan all argue along these lines that no such principle could be true. Though their arguments are framed in terms of Quinn's self-torture example, that sounds crazy, but okay, this is philosophy, we can examine a representative version of their argument that applies to the example at hand. Quote, Sorites style argument. Suppose for reductio, that no small improvement is true. Suppose we have before us a thirsty traveler. We ask her whether she is in pain due to her intense thirst, and she tells us that she is. We then ask, what would she say if she had one additional drop of water? Via no small improvement, we can be sure that her suffering would not have been any less bad. So presumably, she still would answer our question in just the same way. Similarly, if she had extra drops of water, her suffering would still be as bad as in the one drop added case. So again, presumably she would answer our question identically if she had 2 extra drops. If we continue reasoning in this way, we will infer that she would answer the question identically even if she had a full pint of water to drink. Since this is an absurd result to reach, no small improvement must be incorrect. Yeah, so this is a Sorites series. Okay. An interesting reply to this argument comes from Nevsky. She observes that there are 2 ways of running the foregoing argument, one direct and one behavioral, and she argues each version suffers from a different defect. Though the argument given above makes reference to how the thirsty traveler would describe her situation, Nevsky notes that this appeal to behavior might be seen as an inessential feature of the argument. The purest, most direct version of the argument goes like this, and this is making me thirsty. Hold on. Also, I want to say something about the structure of this paper. This paper is interesting. Like, coming up here, we're on page 5 of 15 here. I don't think it's actually 15. It's where are we? 13. So we're almost halfway. And they've just been talking very, very lightly. Like, just going over some like basic examples that are not very complicated. I wouldn't say like any of this stuff is hard. You know, can talk about this. So I'm actually expecting the hammer to drop very soon. This person sounds like talking in this very light way. I'm expecting a hammer to like fall. They are setting us up. I'm feeling set up right now. Somebody is going to like come with we're going to get bulldozed because everything seems a little too easy. If anything is this easy, like you're getting set up. Like no free lunch. There's the name of the fucking paper. There is no free lunch, and we've just been getting set up this whole time. So, like, yeah, I'm getting worried is what's happening. Okay, so the purest, most direct version of the argument here goes here, direct. When the traveler has no water, she is clearly suffering. If no small improvements is true, then her suffering is not relieved at all by any drop added. It follows that her suffering must be just as bad at the end of the series when she has a full pint. This is absurd. Yeah, and this is the full Sorites. So, like, 1 grain of sand does not make a heap, 2 grains of sand does not make a heap, therefore 1,000,000 grains of sand does not make a heap. It's the exact same thing here. 1 drop of water won't help a person dying of thirst. 2 drops, therefore a full pint of water won't save a person dying of thirst. Okay. Per Nevsky, the problem with this argument is that it amounts to giving a Sorites argument as though it were simple reductio proof that there cannot be vague boundaries. After all, not everyone thinks that the Sorites paradox shows, say, that in fact it is possible to make someone bald by removing a single strand of his hair. So in short, I hope my bot's still working. We'll find out. Let's see. Yep, no, my bot is down. That's not good. Let me see if I can fix that really fast. Shit. Alright, I don't know. Oh, maybe it's this thing? No, it says it's good. Weird. Alright. Well, we'll find out if we're there or not. Shoot. Alright, let me just keep going then. Hopefully it'll be okay. Okay, so in short, the direct argument relies on controversial assumptions about how the Sorites paradox should be handled. One way to remedy this is to invoke the traveler's behavior in the argument. Quote, behavioral version. The traveler's answer to the question, are you in pain, will differ substantially whether her canteen is empty and when it is full. This can only happen if there is at least one sharp point at which the traveler's response to the question changes. Such a sharp change is incompatible with no small improvement. Yeah, so we're getting a solution to the Sorites paradox here, saying that it's behavioral. This is how you fix it. But Nevsky notes the behavioral route faces other difficulties. While it seems clearly true that the traveler's answer must change somewhere, it is unclear what to infer from this fact. Nevsky asks, why should we accept that differences in the victim's pain reports are perfect indicators of differences in his sensations? To answer this question, one would need to unpack the behavioral argument in more detail. Is the imagined procedure supposed to be something we could actually carry out with a real person, or is the point a purely conceptual one? Either way, this is controversial territory. Given that the issues are controversial, it would be nice if there were some alternative way to put pressure on no small improvement, one that steers clear of the controversies presented above. As it happens, such an alternative form of argument is available, one which puts pressure on no small improvement by drawing out one of its peculiar consequences. Specifically, no small improvement entails that we can generate a free lunch. That is, if no small improvement is true, then we will often be able to reduce a person's suffering from thirst significantly at no cost to anyone else just by removing water around. In certain contexts, this result can seem implausible. Let me see if I can fix my bot real fast. It does matter to me. Okay. Yay, we're back. Okay, cool. 2. Free lunch arguments. 2. Free lunch arguments. In this section, we suppose that no small improvement is correct. Giving or taking a drop of water cannot change the severity of the thirst of a person suffering. But before we can examine the free lunch arguments, an important clarification is in order. All right, so here's where the author's ramping up. They're trying to do something here. Suppose that Brutus and Jocko are among those suffering in the desert. Each has been given some water, and suppose that we take away a single drop from each of them. From the standpoint of the total suffering, does this change anything? Given a no small improvement, the situation should not be relatively different. Brutus's suffering is unchanged, Jocko's suffering is unchanged. Since the suffering is the same for each person, their total suffering, presumably, is also unchanged. Of course, this property should not only apply to groups of 2. If we take one drop of water from each member of some group or give one drop to each member of a group, it should not change the total suffering of the group, no matter how many people are in the group. With this clarification in place, we can consider the first free lunch argument. Optimization, quote, 10,000 desert travelers are suffering from intensely painful thirst. Each of their empty canteens holds up to 1 pint of water, which consists of 10,000 drops. We have 5,000 pints of water, which we can distribute however we wish. We can't satisfy everyone, but still some distribution may be better than others with respect to the goal of relieving as much suffering as possible. Perhaps the travelers have different levels of tolerance for thirst. In any event, suppose that somehow we succeed in implementing an optimal distribution of water. That is, a distribution that relieves at least as much suffering as any other. But then we tinker with it. Via no small improvement, we can remove 1 drop of water from each traveler's canteen, or at least from the non-empty ones, without making her suffering worse. We can then give the drops of collected, which total to at least half a pint, to 1 traveler who would benefit from receiving more. Okay, yeah, so you get everyone to optimize, you get a little, and then you give everyone a little, take 1 little cup out of that, so they're still kind of at their optimized spot, and give it to 1 more person, and all of a sudden that person got a free drink of water. So, author continues, we have generated a free lunch. As a result of our tinkering, the lucky recipient has benefited while no one's suffering was made worse. So the initial distribution must not have been optimal, which was supposed to be a stipulation of the setup. In making this argument, one needn't rely on any Sorites series, nor need one rely on controversial assumptions linking suffering and behavior. So the argument is immune from the objections that were raised against the Sorites style arguments. Shouldn't the +1 not matter too? Yeah, but this is the whole point, is that you can always skim such a little bit off the top that it adds up to something significant to somebody else. You know, it's you ever have those like little puzzles when you're a kid where you move stuff around and all of a sudden there's like an extra box, like it takes up more space in certain configurations than it did in some other configuration where you've got like little blocks you put together. It's somehow like you think you're doing that. Now in the 3D volume spaces, it's like usually some sort of small issue with how the shapes fit together that you don't see with your eye, but it takes up more space or whatever. And that's what's going on here. It's saying, you know, you're somehow getting more out of what was there somehow. And you only have to do it for 1 time. And so as long as there's 1 person that's getting a free lunch here, then you've somehow shown that this doesn't really make sense, the whole setup. It doesn't tell you what's really wrong with it, but it shows you that there's something really strange going on if you all of a sudden are getting the free lunch. Okay. PT says, I can see how 1 drop can have higher severity ratio to someone else. Yeah. Well, let's assume everyone's whatever, like close enough, about the same. It doesn't really matter. The whole point is that you're getting, say, half the group to where they want to be, and then somehow you're getting 1 more person beyond half by skimming this little bit off. The whole thing relies on this idea that there's changing it by a little amount doesn't matter in the individual, but in the aggregate, it will matter. And so that's what's going on here. In the aggregate, you can Sorites it, you can do like paradox of the heap, and somehow you then end up with the heap, even though you've only been adding 1 grain of sand or a drop of water. Now you have a heap of water. But that's the point, is that you're using this one assumption that just taking a little bit out of something doesn't really change it, and you only have to do it once, but you have to do it once a lot of times over lots of people. Okay, the argument does, however, make an assumption that can be questioned. It assumes the existence of an optimal distribution, that is, a distribution not worse than any other in terms of suffering relief. This assumption seems plausible on certain conceptions of suffering, especially those that allow suffering to be quantified precisely in principle. Yeah, again, who's saying exactly what counts as like optimal suffering mitigation? Like, that doesn't really make sense. But arguably, such conceptions of suffering will be unattractive to proponents of no small improvement, who may think of suffering as, by its very nature, imprecise. They may not agree that there is an unequivocal fact of the matter concerning which several distributions relieve them more suffering than others. If this is right, the proponent of no small improvement has a way of escaping the seeming absurdity posed by the optimization argument. However, a further worry looms, one that the defender of no small improvement cannot shrug off so easily. While the optimization argument may not prove decisive, it illustrates something important, namely how no small improvement gives rise to free lunches. We can always extract 1 drop from many people and then give those drops to a lucky recipient. This fact can be exploited by a second free lunch argument to generate an especially thorny problem. Staircase, quote, the 10,000 travelers are suffering from intensely painful thirst. They come upon a massive 10,000 step staircase. Each step contains a partially filled canteen. The canteen on step 1 contains 1 drop, the canteen on step 2 contains 2 drops, and so on. The travelers manage to arrange themselves on the staircase with 1 traveler per step. Just before they take a drink, the traveler in step 1 proposes an idea. Wait, I was thinking, what if you all just move down one step and I move to the top? She proceeds to explain that on this proposal, no one would be harmed, for all the others forfeit only one drop, while she would benefit. You misheard the first time? Fine. You just thought you were moving one drop from one to one or the other. No, okay, yeah. So everyone gives one drop up to one person. But yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so... And in this one, everyone there's a one drop in the first step, 2 drops in the second, 3 drops in the third. She's saying, well, if you all are willing to go down a step, then I can go to the top and I can just not lose. You guys are only losing 1 drop. I'm, however, getting full canteen. So again, author states, we have a situation that gives rise to a free lunch. If the travelers shift themselves as suggested, the traveler sent to the top benefits, while no one's suffering is made worse. But this can seem implausible when we note that the situation before the shift seems relevantly similar to the situation after it. There is still 1 traveler per stair. If it helps, we can imagine that the travelers are all perfect clones and experience pain from thirst identically. From the standpoint of total suffering, shuffling people around on the staircase does not seem like... Woo! Ivan! Thank you for the raid, my friend. It's unusual for you to be streaming on a Sunday now. I saw you went live. How you been? What's going on? What were you talking about? And as always, if you need to go take a break, get dancing, go do that. Give Ivan a shout out. Ivan, thank you for the raid. Hi. Yeah, welcome in. For anyone from Ivan's stream, hi, I'm Noah. You can call me Noah, Noger, No Gray, No Grayo, whatever you want to call me. Just don't be a jerk. I'm a philosopher. I philosophize. I specialize in logic. Well, yeah, philosophical logic, metaphysics, theory of knowledge, and a bunch of other things, whatevers. Yeah, thank you. It was nice to chat. Have a nice weekend, all. Jenny, thank you for being here. Howdy, waiters. Yes. So yeah. We're reading a paper at the moment on kind of the Sorites paradox, actually. I'm talking about like suffering and like how to mitigate it and some of the arguments surrounding that. So we're discussing like, a lot of these arguments are all kind of like, trying to add one person's suffering to another's, and it's a little weird. And they're saying it's kind of strange. But yeah, Ivan, how are you doing? What were you talking about today? Doger says, I have another meaning for no small improvement. I can't paint just one wall of this room. Damn, this is a nice new cabinet. Yeah, I mean, that's true. But that's the, as Rexler says, if you give a mouse a cookie, apparently if you give Dojo a cabinet, they can't just like, well, then you need a new wall color to go with your nice new cabinet. And if you need a nice new wall cover paint, then you might also need a new floorboard.
San Dimas High School football rules.
San Dimas High School football rules, yeah! We were discussing Kant of all things. I'm sorry, Ivan. I'm sorry. Well, I don't like Kant. But, like, yes. Yeah, that's a bit of a mess. Thank you for the subscription. 31 months. That's been a while. Man, it's been a while. But, yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. All this... I was just saying, I don't do I haven't really improved stream. I was thinking about that. But, like, I was saying, like, I did something today just to improve stream just for shits and giggles. And I haven't done this in forever because I can do this now. My God, where did he go? I'm back. Okay. I'm back. Sorry. But like, yeah. What was I doing? Whether Kant's claiming space and time are products of consciousness or whether physicalism is compatible with his epistemology. Oh, yeah, because this is one of the things that he's gotten criticized for since, for a while now. Well, like, he really has to have space and time be just what we think it is. And the fact that physics doesn't exactly conform to how we experience it, because, relativity and all that. Yeah, that does cause problems, yeah. Emmanuel Kant was a real pissant, yes. What's up, Unreal Brian? Yeah. So, well, I wonder what did you guys conclude, if you did? I mean, I have no great love for Kant, so I mean, I may be doing him, may not be being the most fair to Emmanuel. But, yeah, it's like, it's difficult because he thinks that these are just categories of how we have to see the world. And the fact that, like, physics doesn't just work that way is a little weird in that case. It's kind of problematic. Energy and I were just agreeing on the interpretation. Yep, that can happen. That can happen. So, I'm sure that there are like neo-Kantians nowadays that have, found ways around the difficulties, like the classic difficulties that he has or the theory has with relativity. I'm sure there's ways around that. What paper are we reading? We are reading this paper called No Free Lunch. And it's basically talking about Sorites style arguments when it comes to suffering, and like in some different contexts. So like the paradox of the heap. You add one little grain of sand, another grain, you don't have a heap. But then if you keep doing that, eventually you do have a heap. So we're talking about this, and in this sort of like moral area, what can be done about it? Ivan says, if Kant knew about relativity, he would have employed that rather than Newton. Yeah, and that's part of the issue. And do you want your philosophy really to be so dependent on like the physical sciences? Because, the physical sciences, we get better at that. We learn stuff. We learn about the world. So it's like, do you want your metaphysics to be so dependent on that? And it's like, maybe you don't. Maybe this is not how to be doing metaphysics. If you think that space has to be what we think it is, as opposed to what the physicists actually find out is out there. So yeah. But anyway, I don't know. I have no desire to try to save Kant from himself or from anything else. You got peanut butter in my chocolate. Oh my God. Yeah. Well, I do like me a Reese's peanut butter cup. I mean, I want peanut butter to be in my chocolate in a Reese's peanut butter cup. I don't know what that's about. Energy says, I believe you can reconcile Kant's idea with Einstein's ideas if we adopt an instrumentalist epistemology of science, but that's a conversation for another day. Yeah, that's a whole different thing going on. I'm sure there's a way to do it. This is not, people have known about this problem for a long time. There's still a lot of Kantians around. I doubt the Kantians just took this lying down and just be like, yeah, well, Kant was stupid. Like, they don't do that. They find ways to fix it. Thank you for the lurk, Tindarius. Appreciate the lurk. Yep, but we're reading about free lunches. Like, can you just if you take a drop of water from everyone else, give it to somebody else, and then you get a free cup of water for them, and everyone else is basically the same, and they're gonna not, die of thirst, and then you get free cups of water if you get one drop out. Then how did you save one more person's life when you were saving everyone else's life, but they can get by with losing a drop? So it's kind of a Sorites style here. Okay, so yeah, and in this case, everyone's getting a slightly different amount, and one person's like, well, why don't you put me at the end where you get the most, and everyone else is only losing one drop of water, and then I get a full canteen of water, and everyone's getting only one drop less, so it should be the same. Energy says, from a deontic perspective, aren't all violations of autonomy, even minor violations, categorically immoral? Yeah, I think so. Tindarius reminds you of a story you read today, but it's pretty heavy. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I mean, this is philosophy stuff. Just average the canteens. Easy, yeah. Easy peasy. Yeah. And do some of that funny math and have infinite water. Just take a limit or something. Easy peasy. Okay, again, we have a situation. Yeah, continuing reading. Doge says, I love that you think I'd stop at paint and flooring. I might have to start making my own cabinetry. Dojo, I was limited only by how much time I want to spend talking about the things you might do with home improvements. Believe me. I mean, I have like some hobbies. I do like a little arts and crafts stuff. So I was like, I got a package in the mail. I was talking to my mom. I was showing it to her. And she was like, she saw like these little baggies. She's like, did you just get drugs ordered in the mail? I was like, if arts and crafts is a habit, then yes. Because I was getting like these little baggies of beads. And I was like, she saw these little baggies. I was like, they're like glass beads, Mom. They're like, it's like, yes, it is a habit. I'm buying like glass beads and more glass beads. Hey, what's up, Cost? If it wasn't worth for therefore, if only, yes. Dime bags of beads. Literally, I mean, they're over there, but like, I can't show them to you, but like, yeah, that's exactly what they look like. They're dime bags of beads. There are no small things, yeah. They're actually really nice beads. Like, they're glass beads, that's why I got them. It was funny. She was like, what are you doing with those like little baggies? I'm like, they're arts and crafts, Mom. Like, what do you think I do? It's not even like, well, was this before weed was illegal? It may have been before weed was, no, this was after weed was legal here in New York. So it's like, even if I was buying drugs, well, it didn't look like weed at least, so To her credit, maybe I was getting some other strange drug. Can you steal one bead? No. They're all mine. They're my beads. You cannot have the beads. Everything counts in large amounts. Exactly. Ivan, I was also talking about dancing on stream. I was watching these VR chats where there's just like streams of like very fancy avatars dancing for the viewing pleasure. I was someone mentioned to you that you like to dance on stream, so I was like, yeah. They're like, don't tell Ivan. Well, I'm telling Ivan. VR chat is now full of, well, not full, but there's some very high-end avatars with full jiggle physics enabled and dancing. So yeah. You do that? Nice, Koss. VR chat is fun, yeah. There's no one deontic perspective? Sure. Well, there are big classes of deontic perspectives. You DJ as a cat in VR. Fun. There you go. Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about. So Ivan likes to dance. I don't know if he likes to dance in VR, but like, there's definitely VR dancing going on. So, yep. There's a kitty. Hi, kitty. Okay, where were we? Again, we have a situation, and as always, yeah. If you need to raid and run, if you need to go get food, go do stuff, take care of yourself, Ivan. Thank you for the raid, and thank you for the subscription. Appreciate it. Again, we have a situation that gives rise to a free lunch. If the travelers shift themselves as suggested, the travelers sent to the top benefits while no one's suffering is made worse. But this can seem implausible when we note that the situation before the shift seems relevantly similar to the situation after it. There's still one traveler per stair. If it helps, we can imagine that the travelers are all perfect clones and experience pain from thirst identically. From the standpoint of total suffering, shuffling people around on the staircase does not seem likely to improve matters. Yet no small improvement seems to imply that shifting everyone as described would reduce the total suffering. Viper says, I still haven't tried VR chat. I was thinking about holding out till I got some Smile VR modules. Yeah. Again, I'm just like not interested in VR too much at the moment. I'm waiting, like, maybe if I had the high-end VR stuff, it'd be cool. You get some slime VR modules. Aha, okay. I was like, what's Smile? Okie doke. Continuing. Like the optimization argument, the staircase argument does not rely on a Sorority series, nor does it rely on any controversial assumptions linking suffering and behavior. Unlike the optimization argument, however, the staircase argument also does not require us to assume that total suffering can be quantified precisely in principle, or that there is some best distribution of order which relieves as much suffering as any other. Orange asks, has anyone tried to measure world suffering in some metric? No. And the author here mentioned it, to be fair to this author, but in general, a lot of these discussions are kind of ridiculous because of that. They always try to quantify it in some way, but it's very hard to do, and everyone knows it. So the best authors will, say, look, we're not quantifying it, but you can say some things are worse than others, like on a relative scale, or some things are obviously worse, like getting someone killed is bad, getting someone injured is bad, but you didn't get them killed, all right? So it's like there's still like obvious things that can be made. There's no metric of suffering that is going to work for all people at all times. Yeah. And just Cause says I play on my desk, no VR hardware. Yeah. See, I'm not interested in just like doing that. If I want to do it, I want the full experience, I guess. Tobin Spirit Guide. There you go. Yeah. Orange says, as an engineer, I like solid numbers so we can check things are improving. Yeah, and that's part of the difficulty. I mean, it's, the self-report thing. You're talking about self-reports from people, and then people describe things differently. You've got different cultures. People describe different sorts of pain differently. Men and women describe things differently. People experience pain differently. It's really hard. So, if you've gone into a hospital and you tell them you're in pain, they'll give you like a 1 to 10 scale with like little smiley faces on one end and like really unhappy faces at the other end. And maybe that works for you, maybe it doesn't. Last time I went into a hospital with problems, I had to tell them, look, I've got 3 pain levels: normal pain, unnormal pain, and death. Okay? And I said, look, as far as you're concerned, I'm at death right now, which is an 11. And like, when I'm in pain, I don't like scream or anything. I'm like, look, you might as well consider me at an 11 right now. And I'd be talking like this. So they move quick when you say that, though. If you only use it for porn, see, that's what I thought. Viper's gonna whip out his cock on the bridge if that's what it takes. There we go. Now we've got a plan. Okay. So yeah, this staircase argument where you're just shifting everyone, and this is in computer science. You've got one of these hotel things. We've shifted everyone one in the hotel. That's the same sort of style argument here, where everyone has gone one room down, and it looks like you've squeezed someone else into the hotel somehow. And that's the setup we've got going here. Mr. Chekhov, put that away. Okay, the staircase argument assumes only that if one person's suffering is relieved substantially while no one else's suffering is affected, then the total suffering is reduced. It is hard to see how this assumption can be denied, but if it is right, it seems clear that no small improvement is incorrect. Yeah, because you've taken the person in the shittiest room and you put them in the best room, and everyone else slid down from in the rooms in the hotel, from the better rooms to slightly worse rooms. But they're saying, well, now I'm having a much better room and everyone else isn't really changed. So somehow there's more happiness in the world. Clearly that doesn't make sense. Okay, so it is hard to see how this assumption can be denied, but if it's right, it seems clear that no small improvement is incorrect. One drop of water can make a difference to someone suffering. So it turns out that there is a satisfyingly direct answer available to the moral quandary non-threshold case seems to pose. What moral reason do I have to pour in my pint? Answer: if I refrain, the travelers will suffer more. Even tiny contributions are morally significant. Okay, so basically, this did not give a direct refutation. This gave a refutation by contradiction. So you assume that there is no problem, and then you show that assuming that no small difference gets to an absurd conclusion, and then you can set this up in a way where we have basically that's right, PhD. Tinderis, you're in a lot of pain, you start laughing at some point. Yeah, this is what I mean when people have different reactions. It's like you start, reacting against your body in some way. This is how insurance operates. Yeah, idea of profits. Everyone pays into the kitty, and then there's one payout every so often, and that makes driving overall safer because, accidents happen, and then those people get paid, and everyone can drive knowing that, they won't be ruined by getting into an accident. So that's fair. Yeah, this is a very common thing. But again, it's this is saying also, this is why you have free riders. One person doesn't pay their insurance. One person drives without insurance. They get away with it, but it eventually does matter for the whole industry. And the whole industry, the rates go up and everyone else suffers because of the free riders. So it's called the free rider problem. Or tragedy of the commons also. Okay, 4. Small differences in competing claims to aid. Even if we consider the preceding question settled, nearby issues merit exploration. Compare two versions of the drops of water example. In the first, which is just the original scenario, the 10,000 contributors provide diffuse aid. Each pools her pint in the water cart, thereby helping every traveler a tiny bit. In the second version, the contributors provide concentrated aid. Each gives her entire pint to one traveler directly, thereby helping that traveler a great deal. In both situations, so long as everyone contributes, the travelers will all be helped equally. But the types of contribution being made are different across the two cases, and though the contributions may relieve equal suffering, it does not necessarily follow, unless we're utilitarian, that each type of contribution has equal moral importance. And this goes to what you were saying, Orange. It's how do you actually add up the suffering here? Maybe you're saving certain people's lives and not others, but saving this person's life somehow is going to create a lot more happiness, and this person's death is actually not going to add up to a lot of suffering, so we should just let that person die and give the other person their water. It's one of these weird things about utilitarianism or consequentialists. Indeed, there is something attractive about the thought that concentrated contributions matter more morally than diffuse ones do. Other things the same. Given a full pint of water to someone with none seems extremely valuable. Giving a single drop to each of 10,000 travelers who already have some can seem less so, even if both acts relieve equal suffering. Yeah. So if I give one person dying of thirst all the water, they're happy. But if I'm giving everyone a drop, but so does everyone else, they're equally doing it, but it feels like I haven't done anything because I only gave that person a drop. call this thesis diminishing significance of diffuse aid. Despite the thesis' appeal, an argument from Parfit, which resembles a second free lunch argument, can be used to pose a challenge to the thesis. It is worth briefly discussing the problem that arises and a possible way out. Suppose we are deciding between two arrangements of travelers on the staircase. 1. Alphabetical. The travelers are arranged alphabetically with Aaron at the top and Zoe at the bottom. Downshift. The travelers are arranged alphabetically with everyone shifted down one step with Zoe at the top. Though the outcomes are similar in many respects, if diminished significance of diffuse aid is correct, then choosing the second one of these options is morally preferable. Choosing downshift amounts to giving Zoe a whole pint more than she was guaranteed to receive, while choosing alphabetical amounts to giving everyone else one drop more than they were guaranteed. From a certain angle, it can seem implausible that either of these options is morally preferable to the other. The two prospective outcomes are rearrangements of each other with exactly one traveler per step. If we idealize the case appropriately, the travelers have equal tolerance for thirst, they possess equally strong claims to aid. The view that it is morally better to bring about downshift can seem unmotivated. At least if it is morally better to bring about downshift, we face a vivid, pointed question about why this is the case. Yeah. Tindari says, but yeah, I also don't normally scream under pain, which can be confusing for some. Once I had a horse on my foot and I could barely say something, so I tapped the guy who owned the horse who stood next to me and pointed at my foot. Yeah. So like, I guess we're kind of similar in this. Like, I mean, I can feel it. I usually can react, but I mean, I've been like, I've like realized I was bleeding. I've realized I was injured well after the fact. I thought I was like, oh, I felt something, but I was like, oh, look at that. I'm bleeding a lot. Oops. That's not good. And it's like, oh, I have to go take care of this. Like, excuse me. So I'd be like with someone, like, they're like, what's wrong? I'm like, oh, look, I'm bleeding. They're like, holy shit, you're bleeding a lot. I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it. It's fine. Oh, Frank's also that way. Okay, yeah. So I guess it's like, this is what I mean. There is no easy way to quantify pain. It's not like you can be like, someone is screaming at this level, and that means they're in X amount of pain. They're screaming at this level, they're in Y amount of pain. It's like, well, Tindarios is laughing this much and Frank is laughing that much. They must be in the same amount of pain. Yeah, see, it don't make sense. Vipers also laughs when we're all in pain. See, exactly. So, and that now we can all test the actual amount of pain in the world by how much Vipers is laughing. Yeah, coping. Yeah, exactly. It's a coping mechanism. Yep. Okay, so a potential answer, because again, this is, I forget what it's called in computer science, where everyone moves down a room in the hotel, but it's the same thing. Everyone moves down a stair in the staircase. And it just means that like there's slightly more water on each step in the staircase. You could say every room in the hotel is slightly nicer than the one next to it, but like, or the index is growing, whatever it is. But yeah. Energy says, is lack of easily quantifiable pain a problem with utilitarianism? It can be. For stuff that says you have to look at what has like the best outcome. How do you quantify best outcome? It's very hard. So yeah, this is a general problem with consequentialist utilitarianism, because you have to say, look, if we're trying to at least reflect on what the best outcome is, you need some way of saying what is best. Now, if you just if you say what is best, I mean, to see your enemies driven before you, to crush them and hear the lamentation of the women. Besides that, if you actually try to give a non-deontological answer at that point, and you're trying to like add up the amount, then yeah, it's a problem. We must condition Vipers to never laugh. Good luck. Hilbert's paradox to the Grand Hotel. Yes, that's exactly. Thank you, Dojo and Vipers. So yeah, this is a Hilbert's hotel style argument where you're everyone's in the hotel and you can move them down one and it doesn't seem significant. How many enemies must I crush before I achieve happiness? You have to ask Conan. I don't know the answer. You have to ask Conan. He knows. Okay. So a potential answer to this question can be drawn from Verhoeven's 2014 paper about how to adjudicate between competing claims to aid. In Verhoeven's framework, each person who stands to benefit or lose out from an upcoming decision has a claim on the decider. The strength of each person's claim other things being equal, is proportional to what is at stake for her. So in the case at hand, Zoe's claim is the strongest. She stands to gain a full pint of water if things go her way. For each other traveler, only one drop is at stake, though together they have numbers on their side. How are we to resolve this conflict between one strong claim favoring downshift and many weak ones favoring alphabetical? On Vorhov's view, only relevant claims matter, and roughly a weaker claim is relevant to a stronger one just in case a person would be permitted to satisfy the weaker claim for herself rather than satisfy the stronger claim for someone else. Frank says, I love that Conan was formally trained to be a barbarian. I know, it's amazing. Alright. Author says, in this way, the account depends upon the widely held view that morality permits at least some partiality to the self. Irrelevant claims are thrown out, no matter how many such claims there may be. Returning to the case at hand, it seems clear that the many travelers' weaker claims are irrelevant in Vorhov's sense. No traveler would be morally permitted to secure a single drop for herself at the cost of a full pint to someone else. So in short, Zoe's claim is relevant. The other ones are not. That is why, according to Vorhov, aggregate relevant claims view, we are required to implement downshift. I mean, I can't see how that's going to work, because then whoever the person with the Y name now can make the same claim and everyone will just have to keep rotating on the steps because you're shifting the thing, but then someone else is in the exact same position Zoe was in. Oh well. The approach presents an interesting and creative way of justifying the thesis of diminished significance of diffuse aid. Of course, the aggregate relevant claims view faces its own challenges. For example, if one were able to choose any arrangement of travelers, the presence of the additional options would make choosing downshift no longer preferable to choosing alphabetical. So the question of whether concentrated contributions have greater significance than diffuse ones remains open. What is clear, though, is that tiny contributions, even when diffuse, do make a real difference. Nog slice, nog crush. Yeah. Okay, that's it. That was it. All right, and they just end it right there. They're just like, nope. The littlest differences make matter. All of that matters. But anyway, as Dojo was getting into a little bit fast, we now rate the paper. So anyone here in chat, you are welcome to rate the paper. You can use the Better TTV emotes that you see below if you don't see them in your chat. You can install the extension, but if this paper you thought was fun, give you some fun ideas, gave you your brain dance, give it a brain dance. Spelling and capitalization do count here. If this was gave you some existential or artistic drama, you give it a scream, or a Bourse for deep ancient ideas, Nog knife for slicing and dicing arguments, Nog navel gazing only for academics, Nog turd, all style no substance, still poop underneath, and Nog grapes for big claims that shrivel up. You can also use the global vote yay and vote nay of Twitch, and also my vote meh. Note that I do calculate an overall score. Anything in the green makes your overall score go up. Everything in the red makes it go down. And the vote meh makes everything go to the middle. Energy says knife, navel, and meh. Peach T says meh. Ra says meh. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. This gives an indirect argument to show that... This kind of gives an indirect argument to show that the common sense view is the right view. It shows that, okay, you can't just... sort of like wrangle, or you can't sort of just do the funky thing and try to what's it called? Jury rig, like the food or the water or how much good you're doing to not claim that it doesn't really matter. Either you do something good or you don't. It doesn't really matter how much or how little it is. Either you did something or you didn't do it. It's not a question of the size of the good or bad that you're doing. It's just whether you did it or not. The guy was nuts. Oh, 10 years old. Oh, okay. The Genghis Khan stuff. Yeah. Genghis Khan he took over the world. You have to be a little craziness. So yeah, energy. Okay. Ivan gave it a meh, navel, and knife. Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling pretty similar about this as everyone else here. For people interested in this is not a bad paper, but that also means you have to be interested in this area, which is kind of where the navel gazing is. It's really only for people who are worried about these sorts of things. It felt very simple. Starter tier. I mentioned this earlier, Peach T. This is deceptive they did a really good job of taking some rather sophisticated argumentation and presenting it as simple and clear. This actually, I think, is really well done in terms of presenting analytic arguments. Like I was saying, this was just what's his name's hotel. Oh God, this is what happens to be Hilbert's Grand Hotel. Like, so this is a famous example in math that is getting, this is a version that is now being used against the Sorites paradox here in a different context when talking about morals. It's like pulling that off is actually pretty sophisticated. And so it feels simple, but like if you understand the argumentation here, like they just Hilbert Hoteled a Sorites in moral philosophy. That's not easy. That's clever, actually. And so even though it felt simple, I think this is deceptive. So like, I think that like, that's how it feels to me. But again, it's also, you know, it's like, as far as analytic philosophy goes, it's not bad. It's on a general topic, but again, you have to be kind of interested in this. Yeah. So in this case, I think it wasn't a bad thing here. So what am I going to give this? Yeah, again, I'm kind of feeling the navel gazing too. Because it's really people do kind of say, well, what's it matter? But everyone knows, like, you're either being a shithead or you're not. If you're like actually trying to get something done, like there. So, let's go Nog Knife. Give it 2. I'm with Vipers here on this. Let's go start there. Maybe I'll throw in a yay also. I'm not sure yet. It's like between meh and yay. Might do both. Again, it's like Viper says, I just got completely distracted by Hollander's EV outlier concept. It looks like a modernized version of Kaneda's bike from Akira. I want it is precious. Yeah, I think I saw something like that. I think I saw a picture of that. Yeah, so Latvian also is giving it a knife and a meh. That's fair. I'm going to go vote. I'm going to go give it a vote man and vote yay also. So it's like between a man and a yay. I'm not angry with this paper. You know, it's like, it was all right. It's like if you want to read some analytic philosophy, this is good stuff in my opinion. I think they did it well. You don't have to love the topic, but like, yeah.